Shalom everyone, we are continuing our limud of Megillas Esther. We're up to Perek Gimel. Perek Aleph was the death or the deposing of Vashti. Perek Beis was Esther being coronated as queen, and Mordechai overhearing the assassination plot of Bixen Beseresh and being memorialized in the king's records as deserving of Tova. And only after all of the elements that will save Klal Yisrael are in place do we now have a gezerah that could lead to our destruction. Gidal HaMelech Achashverosh elevated Haman. This is where you start making noise. Haman ben Hamdasa Agagi. Now Agag was the king of Amalek that Shaul HaMelech was commanded to kill all of the Amalekim. And he did kill all of the Amalekim, but he spared King Agag. And in the interim, King Agag impregnated a woman. King Agag was killed by Shmuel, but the pregnant woman was not found, and she had a child, and that child was the ancestor who eventually became Haman. So Haman is Mizera Amalek, and it's brought down that Shaul failed to kill Agag. Therefore, Mordechai, the descendant of Shaul, has to be Masakein by being the one who orchestrates the death of Haman from Amalek. But Haman's hatred for us is the hatred of Amalek. Vayosem es kisai. Now remember, Haman was called Memuchan in Perek Aleph. God placed the chair of Haman above all of the other officers. In other words, even though Haman was the seventh of the wise advisors, Haman is now number one. He is what we would call prime minister. And Haman treated himself like a god. Haman demanded that everybody bow down and worship him. V'chol avdei hamelech asher b'shar hamelech. All of the servants of the king that were in the gate of the king, the entrances of the palace. Whenever Haman walked down the corridor, either inside or outside, koreim, they would go on their knees, umishtachavim, and they would bow lahaman. Ki chen siva lo hamelech. This is what the king commanded. You must bow down when Haman walks by. It's interesting. Did Achashverosh command it about himself? He gave Haman more cover than he gave himself. Mordechai lo yichra v'lo yishtachaveh. Mordechai did not go on his knees, and he did not bow down. Mordechai refused to do it. Vayomer avdei hamelech al asher b'shar hamelech. And the servant said LeMordechai, Madua ata imer? Madua ata iver? Es mitzvahs hamelech. Why are you transgressing the commandment of the king? Now, the truth of the matter is, it actually is a good question. Why did Mordechai not bow down? So it really depends. If the bowing down to Haman was simply showing kavod, okay, so it might be Mordechai doesn't want to show kavod to a Russia, but certainly b'makam pikuach nefesh, where either Mordechai might be killed, and of course we'll see it was a gezerah on Klal Yisrael. B'makam pikuach nefesh, I can bow down for kavod. But Chazal understand, and this will be a big machlokas, that this was not simply bowing down for homage and kavod, but rather either Haman declared himself to be a god, or he wore an avodah zarah on his robe, so when people would bow down, they would be bowing down to avodah zarah. And Mimela, Mordechai was not mishtachaveh because even b'makam pikuach nefesh, avodah zarah is yehareg v'al yavor. You must allow yourself to die. So Mordechai was misaken himself. The interesting question is, and I'll just leave it as a question, number one, why does he position himself b'shar hamelech? Meaning the best thing would be avoided. Just stay home. If you're not in the proximity of the palace, you're not going to encounter. It's almost as if Mordechai is deliberately putting himself in the sakana. But there is a machlekes. Some learn that Haman was not avodah zarah, in which case it's even more of a kasha. Why wasn't Mordechai mishtacha? Now the Targum and the Medrash bring a whole maisa that years before Mordechai had given Haman some food when Haman was poor and starving, and Haman had sold himself into slavery to Mordechai, and it was inscribed on Mordechai's shoe, and Mordechai would show Haman the shoe that says, "You're my slave, why should I bow down to you?" That's a beautiful, interesting medrash, but l'chayra, that would give Mordechai no right to endanger even his own life and kal v'chomer the life of other people. So it's a shver maisa. The pashtus is it's avodah zarah, and even so it's a kasha. Why does Mordechai deliberately put himself there? And it says, Taka, Vayehi, ki amram elav yom v'yom. Every single day, the Avdei HaMelech would say, "Why are you ignoring the king's command?" V'lo shama aleim. Mordechai didn't listen. He was defiant. V'yagidu laHaman. And they got back to Haman. I don't know why Haman didn't notice it. But they said to Haman, Mordechai refuses to bow down to you. Again, I'm not sure I understand why he needs a report. The chiyuv to bow down is only when he walks by. Wouldn't Haman see that? Maybe he wouldn't, if there are crowds. Lirais, they were curious. Hayam do divrei Mordechai. Will Mordechai be able to get through with this? Because Mordechai said, "I'm a Jew. I don't worship avodah zarah." Again, Esther keeps her identity secret. Mordechai does not. So Haman began to notice. Originally, perhaps, maybe that's how he didn't know his head was lifted up. He just assumed everybody was bowing down. After this report, he's looking. Vayar Haman. Mordechai is not bending the knee or bowing down. He is furious. He wants to kill Mordechai. But that's not coveting. Such a big shot has a grudge against one person. It would be shameful in his eyes just to kill one guy. That looks like a grudge. That doesn't look like a statesmanship act. That doesn't look like a political act. He doesn't want people to think he loses his temper and he's so afraid of one guy. They told him Mordechai's nation, he's a Yehudi. Mordechai never concealed this. Esther concealed it. Haman lahashmid es kol haYehudim asher b'chol malchus Achashverosh am Mordechai. Haman said, "What a crazy thing. I'm mad at this guy. I'm going to wipe out his whole nation." And that looks like a legal thing. That looks like a political decision. Get rid of the Jews because they're a cancer on society. So Yehudim does not mean Shevet Yehuda. It means people from the Malchus of Yehuda, which are all of the Jews that are throughout the diaspora. And when did Haman make this decision? B'chodesh Harishon, the first month, which is the month of Nisan, Bishnas Shtei Mesrei. So again, look at the notes here. We're skipping over a lot of time. Achashverosh's party, where he killed Vashti or deposed Vashti, is the 3rd year of his reign. Esther becomes queen, and Mordechai overhears Bigsan Viseresh in the 7th year of his reign. Haman becomes prime minister. We don't know exactly when, but this decree against the Jews is the 12th year of the reign. So we're already 9 years further into this. Esther has been queen for 5 years. The first month, which is the month of Nisan, the 12th year of Melech Achashverosh. So Haman, number one, has the hatred of Amalek. Haman has the gaiva in which he wants to destroy a whole nation because one person offended him. And Haman is also superstitious, so he wants to pick what's the best month to get the Jews. He built Purim. He draws a lottery. He draws lots. Pur is the Persian word for gogal. Gogal is the Chumash's term for drawing a lot. The Persian term is pur. Lifnei Haman. A lottery was, or a drawing lots, was done in front of Haman, miyom liyom, to pick the right day, umei chodesh lechodesh, and to pick the right month, and the month that was chosen, Shnei Masar, was the 12th month. Now, for some reason, it doesn't say the date. The date was the 13th. But why the pasuk doesn't say the date in this pasuk is not clear to me. It only says the month, that they drew lots, that the best month to kill the Jewish people would be the month of Adar. And Haman was very happy with that, because Adar, 7th of Adar, was the day that Moshe Rabbeinu died. So that was a bad day, a bad mazel for Am Yisrael. He didn't realize that Moshe Rabbeinu died Zayin Adar, but he also was born on Zayin Adar, so it's also a day of Ketula. But this is why he held that the 12th month, again, counting from Nisan. Remember that in Megillas Esther, we use a combination of the Torah dating, which is giving months a name based on number from Nisan, and the Babylonian exile dating, which is the name of Adar. All of these names of our months, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, are Babylonian names. So now, Haman got a date, or at least a month. It doesn't say, again, it's a little difficult for me, it doesn't say Yud Gimel, although that comes later. But after he has the right time, he now goes to Achashverosh. Now, he can't just say, Mordechai didn't bow down to me, if that would be the only thing. In fact, with Vaishtachais, most of the Jews did bow down. Most of the Jews bowed down. That may be why they're Chayav Misa, in fact. Mordechai didn't bow down. So Haman cannot just say Mordechai didn't bow down, because Achashverosh is going to say, kill Mordechai. But Haman wants to kill everybody. So Haman has to make a case why the Jewish people need to be eradicated. Vayomer Haman lamelech Achashverosh, Yeshnai Am Echad, there is one nation, Mefuzar u'mefarad bein ha'amim, they are scattered and separated among all of your countries. B'chol medinais malchusecha, in every country. So the pashtus is this, there's a higher meaning and a lower meaning. The simple meaning is, the Jewish people are not concentrated in large numbers in any single place. A little Jews there, a few Jews there, a few Jews here. Therefore, it will be easy to kill them. If there'd be a large mass of Jews, it might be difficult to fight them. But a little here, a little here, they are surrounded by much larger non-Jewish populations. It'll be easy to kill them. But Chazal say that this has a heavenly meaning. The heavenly Haman says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mefozer Meforet Sinas Chinam. Right? That's why they're weak and undeserving of protection. Now, going back to Haman. So number one, they're weak and they're scattered, so it's easy to get them. Number two, Dasehem Shonot Mikalam. Their laws and their practices are different than everybody else. They don't assimilate. They're not living the way Persian subjects should live. Es Dasei HaMelech Ein HaMaisim. They have no respect for the king's laws. V'lamelech Ein Shoveh. Ein Shoveh. It is not worth it for the king. It's not Shoveh. It's not worth it for the king. Lahanicham, to let them live. They don't contribute to your society. They're separate. They don't assimilate. They don't follow the king's laws. The Gemara gives an example. If a fly falls into their wine, they take out the fly and drink the wine. It's kosher. If you touch the wine, they throw it away. You're worse than a fly. And therefore, im ala melech tov, if the king agrees, yikosev, let it be written down, liabdam, to destroy them. Let's get rid of the Jews. They are a cancer in our society. And to sweeten the deal, Haman offers a huge amount of money. Aseres alafim, this is phenomenal, 10,000 kikar kesef, 10,000 talents of silver. Now a kikar itself is like several 100 pounds of silver. One kikar is several 100 pounds. 10,000 kikar. Eshko, I will weigh out to the king, al yidei osei hamalacha, through those who are involved in weighing precious metal, lahavi el ginzei hamelech, and I will deposit 10,000 kikar kesef in the treasuries of the king. That's a huge amount of money. Haman was one of the richest people in the world. Vayasar hamelech es tabato miyal yado. Achashverosh removes his signet ring from his finger. Vayitna laHaman ben Amdasa. He gives it to Haman ben Amdasa from Agag, the king of Amalek, Sarer HaYehudim. Again, the ring is a sign of authority. He is giving Haman full authority to act on his behalf. Now, this is such a shtus. I mean, he didn't ask who is the nation. He doesn't know. He doesn't even know that it's the Jews. You see, you can't even describe Achashverosh as a hater of Jews. He's just an idiot. Haman just comes in a very short speech, says, hey, I'd like to wipe out this nation because they're not productive. I'll offer you a lot of money. Achashverosh says, nah, do what you want. It's fine with me. Doesn't even ask any questions. Doesn't conduct an investigation. You can keep the money. Why is that? Do to this people whatever you want. I trust you. He doesn't even know who it is. I think the whole picture of Achashverosh as a Seinei Yisrael, well, maybe he's a Seinei because he didn't allow them to build the Beis HaMikdash, but the you don't see it from here. He doesn't even know they're talking about Jews, unless maybe he suspects it. Vayi karu sofrei hamelech b'chodesh harishon. So the scribes of the king were summoned in Nisan. And in other words, that very day, the day of the conversation was Shalosha Asor Yom Bo, the 13th of Nisan. Again, it's very important to note that a lot of the Purim story will take place during Pesach, 11 months before the actual first Purim. And what were the Seifrim told to write? Vayikasev Kechayel Asher Tziva Haman. They wrote down everything that Haman said to write down, and this was addressed El Achashtar Pnei HaMelech, to the nobles. These are the king's governors in all of these provinces. El Apachot, again, in the book of Esther, Daniel, Ezra, and Nehemiah, you have all sorts of terms for Persian officials with different levels of nobilities, like dukes and earls and counts and marquises, right, in British aristocracy. Persia also had a very bloated aristocracy, so we don't really know the difference between Achashtar Pnei and Pachot, but these are different levels of officers. Asher al Medina, El Sarei Am V'Am, Medina Kichsava. To every country, it was in their alphabet, V'Am V'Am Kilshano, every ethnic group in its language. B'Shem HaMelech Achashverosh Nichtav, it was written down in the name of the king, because it was done with that ring, V'nechtam b'tabas HaMelech, it was sealed with the signet ring of the king, V'nishloach Svarim, and these documents were sent, B'yad HaRatzim, in the hands of runners. Again, let me point out, it was known in the ancient world, the first postal system internationally was created in the Persian Empire. And they were very, 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 very fast. So Persia had a way of spreading the word. In fact, that thing in the U.S. Post Office, night doesn't stop us, cold doesn't stop us, etc. That is taken from Herodotus, a Greek historian's description of the Persian postal service. So these Ratzim were able to get through the 127 countries very, very quickly. And what did it say? Lahashmid, laharog, u'liyabed, to destroy and eradicate. In other words, the Goyim were given permission to wipe out the Jews with impunity, a legal pogrom, a legal Holocaust, a legal massacre. Minar v'yad zaken, from young man to old man, taf, children, nashim, women. B'yom echad, and here the date is given for the first time. I don't know why it wasn't given before. B'shlosh asar l'chodesh shnei masar. 11 months from this date, the 13th of the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. And in addition to being given permission to kill the Jews, of course, if there are no Jews, there's no one to inherit, ushlalam, all of their property, levos, can be plundered. Pasashegen hakesaf, the meaning of the document is linosein das b'chol medina medina, to proclaim a law in every country, golei l'chol ha'amim, that every nation should see it. Liot asidim liyom hazeh, that they should be ready to move forward on that day. Haratzim, the runners. Now, runners doesn't mean on foot; it means on horses. Yotzu dechufim, they left in a hurry. This is the 13th of Nisan, 11 months before the official date. Bidvar hamelech, through the commandment of the king. Hadas nitna, and the law was immediately proclaimed in Shushan. They heard it that same day. The other provinces heard it later. And right after Achashverosh condemned a whole nation to genocide, he just sat down to have a party. Hamelech v'Haman yashvu lishtes. They sat down to drink. V'yeir Shushan nevocha, and the city of Shushan were confused, meaning even the Goyim were confused. What is going on? Some decree to kill all of the Jews. Now the emes is, the Gra and the Malbim have an interesting shot, that they actually say there were two different letters that were sent out. One was to the aristocracy and leaders, and one was to the general public. The aristocracy is in Pasuk Yud Gimel. That was said, that said beferish, to destroy the Jews on the 13th of Adar. Now Yud Daled is Pashegan, kind of a summary of the letter, was sent to the public, and that just said, be ready on the 13th, and it didn't say what they would do, because the fear would be, if you reveal to the public genocide against the Jews would have 11 months to prepare, and therefore here Shushan Nevocha were confused because they didn't know what it means to be ready on the 13th of Adar. So the Gra and the Malbim understand there were two letters, but the Pashto says there was one letter and everybody knew that the Jews were slated for genocide. They just didn't understand the logic of it. Chazal say on Pasuk Yud that the king took off his ring, that the king taking off his ring and giving it to Haman did more good for the Jewish people than 48 men prophets and 7 female prophets. Because all of the Nevi'im keep on saying, do tshuva, do tshuva, do tshuva, and it never worked. But by Achashverosh taking off his ring, giving it to Haman, and Haman promulgating the decree, this taka brought all of Am Yisrael to tshuva. So even the evil of Hasaras Hatabas and the Gezerah of Haman was a tremendous hisayrus of Am Yisrael to doing tshuva.